Welcome to the HBCU podcast. I'm so excited because you're listening to episode 32. And before you go any further, stop and leave us a rating or a review. We really want to hear from you. If you're an avid listener or just joining us for the first time, here we're joined by some awesome HBCU grads in the form of co-host and guest. On this episode, we speak with the Workaholic herself, Ms.Koereyelle Dubose. She's a graduate of Tennessee State University. Koereyelle is an author, international speaker, and serial entrepreneur. She's the creator of Single Wives Club, Work, Pray Slay Weekend, and the host of Confessions of a Workaholic podcast. During this episode, we discuss her HBCU experience, her impactful conference weekend, and not only how to secure the bag, but how to manage it. Keep listening. It's the HBCU podcast.
I am Koereyelle, and I am a 2007 graduate of Tennessee State University.
Awesome. So thanks again for being a part of the podcast. First, I wanted to know, where are you from? Where were you born and raised? Are you from Tennessee? Are you from Atlanta? Where are you from?
I'm actually from a suburb outside of Chicago. So I grew up in the Midwest, actually finished my last 2 years of high school in Tennessee, and that's how I ended up at Tennessee State.
Before coming to Tennessee State, how familiar were you with the actual college? And did you know, even at the time, that it was a historically Black college?
Oh, definitely. I actually saw Drumline. That came out my junior year of high school, and seeing Drumline literally just it confirmed everything that I had previously thought. Growing up in the suburbs of Chicago and even living in that small town in Tennessee, they were definitely not predominantly Black communities. And so I knew that when I had a choice, I was going to choose to surround myself in that environment with my people. And so I saw Drumline, that confirmed everything. And literally like the very next week, I did my tour at Tennessee State. And I think the day that I chose to go, it was like something crazy. Some Greek organization was doing something in the courtyard. And just that one experience, I knew that I could not go anywhere else. So yes, I knew it was an HBCU. There were a couple other ones on my list, but after that visit, I knew I had to go to TSU.
Okay. So what about your family? Did you have any other individuals in your family who had attended HBCUs?
I did not. There's a handful of people in my family that attended any college at all. And so I am definitely the first HBCU grad, but I'm definitely encouraging all of my baby cousins and nieces and nephews to definitely choose HBCUs.
Awesome. So while you were at Tennessee State, you were an education major, correct?
Absolutely.
So what attracted you to the field of education?
You know what? I was that little girl that was literally in the basement, like having class with my stuffed animals. I always knew from way back when that I wanted to be a teacher. And so I didn't even really consider anything else until I got to college, and then thought I wanted to be a nurse for one semester and failed intro to nursing and said, let me go on back to the education building. But I knew forever that, education was where my heart was at. So it was a no-brainer for me when I got to college.
Nice. And you've done, prior to becoming an entrepreneur, which we're going to talk a little bit more about, but prior to that, you had a little stint in teaching in elementary school, correct?
Yep, 2nd and 3rd grade.
And what was your thought process like when you decided, hey, I'm leaving my career as a teacher to actually venture off to become an entrepreneur?
Well, I actually didn't leave teaching to become an entrepreneur. I was in a relationship, ended up breaking off an engagement, really was just trying to run away from all of my problems, and gave up my teaching contract here in Atlanta to go teach in Abu Dhabi, and decided not to go, was kind of stuck in between jobs and knew I didn't really want to go back to teaching. And so since then, I've been out of the classroom, just figuring things out, making it work. It's been a whole lot of trial and error, but I definitely did not just take that leap of faith and walk away from the classroom into a business or, into entrepreneurship. It was definitely an organic thing that happened. I was kind of forced to make a decision, and I decided not to go back to the classroom, and the rest is kind of history.
Well, my sister, much like yourself, she's a teacher. She's a gifted teacher, and she's always in education mode all the time. So I know that's something you guys just can't turn off. But just talking about education and specifically what you do now, you're still educating women through empowerment and a virtual community. So when did you realize that was the path that you wanted to take?
You know what? I didn't necessarily realize it. Again, it was kind of a natural thing. I didn't set out to necessarily educate. When I created the Single Wives Club in 2012, my goal was just to create a platform for me to learn alongside other women. And in creating that platform and it becoming a successful brand, that's when I started, teaching webinars and teaching classes and doing coaching and consulting for other entrepreneurs who wanted to start businesses of their own. So I didn't necessarily set out, to kind of be an educator as an entrepreneur, but like you said, I'm an educator at heart. So it's kind of just in me. I can't really turn it off. So it was a natural, kind of a natural transition for me to start educating in this way.
Okay. Just looking back with everything that you've learned at TSU, how have you been able to, put together what you've learned or utilize what you've learned as an education major in what you do today?
Again, everything that I do is based in education, from the podcast to WorkAHBCU, which is, my annual conference, to the books that I've written that doesn't have chapters, it has lessons. Like everything that I do, it literally has that foundation of wanting to educate because I definitely believe that in order to live a life that you love, you have to be a lifelong learner. And so that was definitely instilled in me at Tennessee State University. And just that experience of teaching, of learning how to teach is definitely something that has helped me in my career, because when I'm doing a speaking engagement or when I'm, interviewing someone for my podcast or when I'm hosting the conference, all I'm really doing is educating. All I'm really doing is teaching. So Tennessee State definitely laid that foundation for me.
Nice. So you mentioned, as you were talking, of course, Single Wives Club, but I did want to talk a little bit more about your WorkAHBCU conference and how that came about and how they can be a part of it, if interested.
Of course. So WorkAHBCU actually started as Single Wives Weekend. It was our annual conference for all of the members of the Single Wives Club to come together, to learn, to connect, to network, and to just be, educated and inspired. But 3 years into hosting Single Wives Weekend, I realized that my programming wasn't just beneficial for single women. Like all women could benefit from the topics that we were discussing and from the workshops that we were presenting. And so we transitioned to WorkAHBCU Weekend. This is our 6th annual conference, and it's a 4-day weekend where women are not just empowered, but also educated. My goal is really for this to be a conference that you walk away knowing something new, knowing somebody new, and having a real plan and a real strategy for how you're going to be successful. I have attended so many events where it looks good, but it wasn't really anything of substance. It was really just an opportunity, to take a selfie and have a photo op. But I definitely, every year with the planning that we put into WorkAHBCU, our goal is always to make an impact and to really give women the tools that they need to take back to their real lives and apply them so that they're not going to be in that same place the next year. And every single year, our guests come back and talk about the books that they've written and the businesses that they've started and the connections that they've made. And so it really is an honor to be able to create this space, this safe space for women to come together and to talk about everything from, personal finance to entrepreneurship to relationship readiness. We're talking about everything A to Z. And so WorkAHBCU is definitely of value, whether you are single, married, an employee, or an entrepreneur. You are absolutely going to get something of substance from Work Pricelay. And this year, it's being held November 1st through 4th in Atlanta. And of course, all of the details are online at workpricelay.com.
Nice. And congratulations on did you say 6 years?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, that's a long time, and I can see that it's only up from there. I like that you mentioned in telling us about the conference that you wanted it to be more than a surface level, because I know that I've attended quite a few conferences for various things, and you go into a workshop and you're all ready to learn all of these great things, and they kind of just give you, again, kind of things that you knew. They didn't really break it down much further. And so I'm really excited to hear that at your conference, you're able to get an in-depth knowledge about whatever the topic is that you guys are talking about, or your panelists or your speakers or workshop. But how do you go about choosing the individuals who are a part of your conference, the speakers, the panelists, and making sure that they're individuals who can really impart some wisdom to your guests?
So every year, my dream team and I, we sit down and we spend an entire day talking about all of the things that worked, what didn't work, what we want to do more of, going over our guest feedback, reviewing the surveys that we've gotten, and really figuring out how we can make every year even better than the last. And so we talk about, relevant topics. We talk about the topics that we definitely know will be the most valuable for our guests. And so last year when we sat down, we decided that we really wanted to focus on not just entrepreneurship, that's a given, but we wanted to also make sure we focus on health. And so this year we have, a doctor that is a main stage speaker that's speaking about stress, because yes, we want to work, but we don't want to overwork. We don't want to stress ourselves to the point where we can't even enjoy the success that we've been working so hard for. So we definitely wanted to make sure we included that health and self-care aspect. Personal finance is also another really big topic that is not often talked about. We hear people talking about building your credit, but we don't often hear people talking about building your legacy and preparing for retirement. Everybody is jumping on the entrepreneurship bandwagon, but most times as an entrepreneur, you don't have a 401k. You don't really have a retirement plan. And so instead of just focusing on securing the bag, we're going to be talking about managing that bag and how to really make sure that you're setting yourself and your, family up for success. And so we definitely make sure that we are talking about topics that need to be discussed, that aren't always in the forefront, but that can really be life-changing and beneficial for our guests. We also always host the Big Hat Brunch on Sunday. That's kind of our finale event. And that event is focused on Black love, Black relationships, and marriage, Black family, like how we can rebuild that solid family foundation, so that all of the work that we're putting in doesn't go in vain. Because if you're just successful for yourself and nobody around you, is blessed by your success, or you don't have anyone to share that success with, I don't really think it's worthwhile. And so Work Pricelay is definitely not like anything else that is out there. We definitely try to set ourselves apart by making sure we touch on the family aspect, the relationship readiness aspect, the financial freedom aspect, and making sure that we focus on personal development as well as professional development.
Nice. And the relationship readiness aspect is how your single wives club, kind of manifested, and now you have it as a part of Work Pricelay. But I was again listening to you, or maybe it was even an interview. I'm not sure which one, but you had a quote that said, especially from the relationship aspect, if you find him before you're ready, well, before you are who you're meant to be, then he's not going to be ready for who you'll become. And I thought that was such a really great quote, because I think,
Oh, I said that.
yeah, you said that. Yeah.
That's true, though.
Yeah, I
That
couldn't
is very
remember
true.
where you said it, but I thought it was a good quote, because I was like, a lot of us really don't focus as much time as we should on becoming and getting prepared for who we're supposed to be before marriage and all of that.
So true. And I know so many people who, not to say that, it's not going to work if you marry young, because it definitely can. But I know so many young divorced folks that got married right out of college or got married to that high school sweetheart, and they literally didn't give themselves time to grow or evolve or even become who they're meant to be. And so, of course, you start to go your separate ways. Of course, your interests, and your beliefs and your values and all those things change. So I definitely think that we have to start giving ourselves time and stop, comparing our lifeline to, our timeline, like what we see on Instagram. That ain't real. Like, you cannot compare what's going on in your real life to what you think somebody else is doing or what somebody else has. So definitely spending that time to develop ourselves personally, I think is very, very critical.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm hoping, as far as the listenership for the podcast, I know we get a lot of younger folks who listen and, try to gain a little insight on some of the alums from the various HBCUs. But I really love what you're saying about, preparing yourself, because we all think we're on that timeline, especially in college, where it's like, meet somebody, get a career, get married, and that's the fast track. And so if they're listening, Work, Pray, Slay, and KOEREYELLE has so many, gems out here that you can really get some insight on how you should maybe move forward.
Absolutely. And I think that this is such a great conversation to have because, again, we are often pressuring one another to go to college. Once you're done with college, you got to get a good job. Once you got that good job, then it's time to either get married or buy real estate, or, like, we pressure one another into doing these things without ever stopping to think about it. And so, everything is not for everybody, and everybody's timeline is different. But I definitely think that whatever you choose to do, you just have to make sure you're making that decision based on the right things and not based on the pressures of other people or, your lack of self-esteem or whatever. You have to make sure whatever decisions you're making are based on what's the healthiest choice for you.
Absolutely. So work, we know about that part. You told us a little bit. And then we also know a tidbit about, the slaying part, but we don't hear a lot about the praying part. So how important is like your prayer and spirituality for you? And why did you make that such a major part of your conference? And I'm pretty sure your everyday life.
So I definitely think that we oftentimes try to separate, and the pray is not religious. I know that that's like the what you automatically think about, like, I'm this conference must be for church girls, but that is not it at all. Whatever spiritual relationship you have, then that's the pray. The pray actually means for you to ground yourself in faith. So work, pray, slay like breaks down the work, the pray, and the slay each have their own meaning. The work with an E is the effort and the energy that you dedicate to your own dreams, aside from all of the things that you're doing for everybody else. The pray is you grounding yourself in faith. And then the slay is you showing out in celebration of your success. So the grounding yourself in faith is really, truly crucial to the success, even to the success of your relationships, right? Because if you do not have faith, if you do not realize that what's meant for you cannot miss you, then you're going to get caught up doing a whole lot of the wrong things. And I have definitely learned on my journey that you cannot have success professionally if you aren't full of faith and if you aren't, making healthy decisions personally. And so I definitely know the relationship between your level of faith and even your finances, your level of faith and, the level of success that you have in your business. And you cannot survive this journey of entrepreneurship or really just the journey of life if you don't have faith. And so I definitely, could not have left that out. I think that, if you write, like a book on success, you can't leave out the spirituality aspect, because there are so many days that you're going to be questioning yourself, that you're going to be wondering how you ended up doing this, why you're doing this, what in the world you were thinking, is it really worth it? And if you don't have faith, you're going to fall out, like you are going to get stuck. And so I definitely could not, host an event without making that a major part of it.
Nice. Yeah, that's how I was introduced initially to you and your podcast, because I think I was searching like prayer, spirituality, and I came across Trust God's Timing, but Get to Work. And that's the one that I listened to. And I was like, oh my gosh, this was on time.
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah. So, transitioning a little bit and talking about the podcast, Confessions of a Workaholic, when did you decide to, I believe it was a book first, but when did you decide to make the book a podcast?
So it was actually a podcast that I turned into a book. I had previously done a radio show with the Single Wives Club. We had Single Wives Radio, and I was getting like so many amazing guests. But after the show was off the air, then it was like it was over with. And so I wanted to be able to really capture these conversations in a way that I could keep them, kind of have a catalog of them. And I wanted to definitely share the real life experiences of entrepreneurs. And so Confessions of a Workaholic is all about sharing the untold success secrets of fearless female entrepreneurs. I meet so many amazing women who are doing amazing things, but they struggled like hell to get there. And we don't often hear about those stories. And so when you start struggling, you think like you're the only one. And so Confessions of a Workaholic is not just talking about, like the shiny parts, like the success, but we're talking about the work, like the people who doubted you, the times when you went broke, the lessons that you had to learn the hard way. Like we're really sharing those stories and those secrets that people don't get to see on Instagram or don't get to read about, on your blog, because typically on social media, we just want people to see like the finished product. We want people to see, all of the good, but we want to hide, the imperfect and the ugly. So it's not, we're not just sitting up talking about our struggle stories, but I am asking those tough questions and those juicy questions to really help my listeners know what to expect if they are looking forward to entrepreneurship, or get some new ideas, if they're already an entrepreneur. So Confessions of a Workaholic started out as a podcast. About 2 years in, I decided to turn it into a book. I literally took some of the biggest lessons that I had learned from my guests. I took some of my favorite quotes from my guests, and I added my own business lessons for entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs. And I put it into a book called Confessions of a Workaholic. And so the podcast series and the book they're sisters. They go together.
So podcast before the book. I love it. Nice. And what has your feedback been like from the podcast community? I mean, we've been doing the HBCU podcast maybe less than a year. And we've had some feedback, and I know, especially with some of the African American community, a lot of people aren't super familiar with podcasting. So I'm just curious to know from you how your feedback has been.
You know what? I had never even I think I had heard of a podcast, but I didn't really realize what a podcast was. I had never even listened to one until I was interviewed for someone else's. And that opened me up to this whole new, way of, this whole new platform basically that you can create for yourself through podcasting. But millennial women are into podcasts. So I think that it definitely depends on your audience. But my audience, they surprisingly are really into podcasts, and they are faithful. I literally can upload a episode, and I mean, I'll go back and look at it in an hour, and 200, and 50 people have already listened to it and are tweeting me about it. And I'm like, man, like, how did they even find out that I hit publish? I don't even know how they get it, but they are hooked. And I love being able to share my lessons learned and be able to empower and encourage and just help the next person understand that, it's going to be all right if you just keep working. But I've gotten some really good feedback, and I'm always, always blessed when somebody tells me, that an episode blessed their life. So I've gotten good feedback, but I think it definitely depends on your audience, because podcasting is something, for me, it's something new. So I'm sure it's that way for a lot of other people too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Very cool. So to date, what can you say you enjoy most about the work that you're doing now? Because I know it's varied. You podcast, you're an author, and tons of other things. But what is one of the things that you most enjoy about the work that you do?
The thing that I enjoy the most is getting that feedback, getting those DMs, receiving those emails that say, I'm so glad I opened this email. I literally got an email probably 3 weeks ago from someone who was in one of my programs like a year ago. I have not heard from this girl. Reply back to one of my emails to tell me that I saved her life. Like, she was literally about to pack up her house. She had lost her job. She's about to move back home. All of these things over this bad relationship. And the podcast episode was literally, you can't boss up with bums. And she opened up this podcast, this email, and she literally typed me this long email telling me how I was getting on her nerves, always in her inbox, with all these positive things to say, and that she was ready to unsubscribe from my email list. But God, thank God she opened up that email and listened to that episode. So hearing those words from people who are just like you and me, who are just struggling, like just going through it, and being able to reach down and pull them up and, dust them off and let them know that it's going to be okay. That's what's the best part of what I get to do, is just being a blessing to other people.
Nice. Yeah, that's amazing. I've not heard a story like that before. And I mean, the story you just shared, like, that's always the impact that I think me and probably most of the people podcasting hope to have, on their audience or their fans or the community. So
absolutely, that is what it's all about.
Yeah. Okay, so of course you're here on the HBCU podcast, and you're probably wondering, Natasha, when are you going to talk to me about HBCUs? So this is the portion where we talk about campus life. So what would you say your undergraduate experience was like at Tennessee State University?
Party time. I had so much fun at TSU. I had a great time. I did not stress for all 4 years. Like, I was an education major, like I said, and so I didn't have the typical like college studying nightmares. I wasn't spending hours in the library. I was having a really great time. Like, when my dad dropped me off at college, that's one of the things he told me is, I want you to work hard, but I don't want you to work too hard. I really want you to enjoy yourself. And I took that and I ran with it. So my time at TSU was lit.
And you're probably like one of the few guests who has come on and, been transparent about that, right? And like, hey, I just had a blast.
I did. I learned a lot. I met great people, but looking back on it and being, 32 and having real big girl bills, and real responsibilities, it was just such a fun, carefree time. So yes, I know you have more questions and we can go a little bit deeper, but if I had to put it in a nutshell, like, I really had the time of my life at TSU.
Nice. So what are some of your favorite memories of TSU?
So definitely pledging Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, definitely one of my favorite memories. I have so many amazing relationships and friendships with people through that experience, and just learned so many skills and business principles and so many different things through that experience. So that was definitely one of my favorites. I actually started an organization at Tennessee State my freshman year. So that was definitely an exciting time, and learning more about entrepreneurship. I think, although I was in college, I definitely had my little side hustles. So that was, definitely a great time to be able to learn those things as well. And then of course, homecoming, like, nothing can compete with a HBCU homecoming. So between pledging, homecoming, and just the Black college experience, those were some of my favorites.
Now, homecoming for you all, what was it like? Because I'm assuming, I think TSU is more of a football school. That's kind of your flagship sports program. So what was homecoming like?
Homecoming was always the best parties of the year. It was always, the alphas and the kappas always having, like, battling for who's going to have the best parties. Nobody went to sleep. Nobody went to class. And even now, you can go back to homecoming and just have the time of your life connecting, with people from years ago. But homecoming at Tennessee State, I think it was a pretty typical HBCU homecoming. I never personally did a lot of tailgating. That wasn't like a huge thing for me at school, but people definitely definitely did. But we always had like a pep rally. That was like our thing. The pep rally on Friday, and then the Kappa Tea Party right after that. That was like the thing that you look forward to at TSU homecoming.
Nice. Okay. So who was your rival school?
FAMU, and I know you've probably had a million rattlers on this show. So let me represent for Tennessee State and our Tigers.
You are
But
the
yeah, we
first
definitely.
Tiger. Yeah, the first Tennessee
Yes,
State.
yes, yes. Well, I'm here to represent for all of us.
Yes. Okay, so what lessons would you say that you learned at Tennessee State that you don't think you could have learned anywhere else?
I could not have learned anywhere else the level of excellence that Black people are naturally gifted with. I think being able to see so many amazing and creative and just innovative Black people who looked like me, I literally could not have gotten that experience anywhere else, living and breathing and sleep, like being in that environment 24/7, day in, day out, just seeing Black excellence. And I saw some Black foolishness, definitely, but more Black excellence than anything. There's nowhere else that you can get that than an HBCU. So definitely, I guess everybody listening is already in an HBCU, so I don't have to necessarily try to convince them. But if you are on the fence, if you are in high school and you're thinking about it, there's nowhere else under the sun that you will get to experience Black excellence like you will at an HBCU.
Black excellence is what it is. That's what you'll get at an HBCU. Take that advice if you're listening. I did want to ask you because, of course, you're an entrepreneur and you're well known for that. But being an entrepreneur now, do you believe that college is still an important step in one's life?
You know what? I'm so torn on this because again, I don't think that there's no other place that you can get the college experience, even if it's not the Black college experience. Just what college teaches you about yourself, period. That experience I think is priceless. So I do definitely appreciate that. However, looking
Right.
at this $90,000 in student loan debt from my master's degree is sickening to me, knowing that I'm not using it. And I know so many successful people who didn't finish or, like me, have this debt that they're not using. And it's just, we're literally, in the hole for no reason. And so I can't say that I'm going to, try to convince my kids to go to college. If they want to do it, I'm going to support them. I'm not going to pay for it. They're not going to pay for it. We're going to get some free bands somehow, some way. But I think that college is not a bad idea if you can go for free. There's way too many grants and scholarships and funding options to have student loans like we do. And so I don't know if I'm going to recommend it to my kids, but I won't, try to deter them from going.
Okay. Sound advice. All right. So, also on the HBCU podcast, we do talk a bit about giving because we think it's very important. I think today I was on Instagram and I saw something. I wasn't able to research it because you know how memes are sometimes, but they were just kind of comparing the endowments of some of the predominantly white institutions in HBCUs, and the difference was astounding. But so we like to encourage people to give to their HBCU. But with that being said, what does giving back to Tennessee State look like for you?
Giving back to Tennessee State, for me, I have like a mentor relationship with a lot of the ladies that either attend Tennessee State right now or have attended. And I think definitely having that connection and being able to teach them, again, my lessons learned without them having to experience things the hard way is definitely a way of giving back. But of course, sending in that donation also is very beneficial as well. So being able to do that is definitely a blessing. But I definitely encourage everyone, even if you feel like you're not in the position financially to give back, reach out to someone who is, a student now at your school, or is a recent grad that may need, career advice or is looking for a position. that's something that I try to actively do. You know, if I know that someone is coming to Atlanta and they're looking for a job or they're looking for advice or they're looking for an introduction or a connection, I really try to bridge the gap when I can. So that's how I give back. But there's definitely other ways to give back other than just those donations, even though those dollars, you know, definitely go a long way as well.
Nice. So we're going to wrap it up. But before we do, I have a few HBCU rapid fire questions for you. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. What was your favorite thing about Nashville?
I wasn't ready. Favorite thing about Nashville? I didn't like Nashville. Can I be honest? Yeah, I didn't like Nashville. I guess I can say it was a college town. Like there were other colleges. I'll go with that. But Nashville's not my favorite city. But I'll just go with that.
Okay. Did you have a favorite roommate?
Girl, I'm about to give you all bad answers on these. I did not have a favorite roommate. No, I couldn't wait to have my own little space. I did not have a favorite roommate. I had some really good roommates, but none of them were great enough to be a favorite.
Nobody stands out. Okay. Okay, so being a TSU alum, have you ever met Oprah?
Oh no, I can't wait. I can't wait to meet Oprah. And when I do, that's going to be like the first thing that I say. That is, you know, where we draw our connection. So I'm definitely going to throw that at her. But no, I have not met her yet.
Absolutely. I'm sure it's in the pipeline. Okay. Well, thank you so much again for being a part of the podcast. Last thing, what is coming up for Koereyelle that we should be on the lookout for?
Work, Pray, Slay is where it's at. That is where all of my effort and energy and attention is going to these days. Again, it's this November 1st through 4th here in Atlanta, and we definitely get college students who attend each year. So don't think that, you know, you have to be an entrepreneur, you have to be in your career in order to benefit. So Work, Pray, Slay is definitely an exciting part of what I have going on. I also just recently launched the Get Money Gang, which is your formula for more wealth with less work, where I'm able to coach and consult entrepreneurs in creating more passive income, adding that to their current business model. So Work, Pray, Slay, and the Get Money Gang. And then, of course, I have new episodes of Confessions of a Workaholic each and every week on iTunes, iHeartRadio, and Google Play.
Nice. Okay, so everybody, if you're listening, we can share all of the information that Koereyelle just shared with you in the show notes, as well as on the hbcupodcast.com. Where else can they find you online or on social media?
You can find me at Koereyelle on all social media channels, as well as Koereyelle.com, and then, of course, WorkPraySlay.com.
Okay, again, thank you so much for being here. I really am so glad we got a chance to chat.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to the HBCU podcast. We have so much more HBCU content on the way, so make sure you subscribe to the podcast, rate the podcast, and visit us at thehbcupodcast.com. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at the HBCU Podcast. Like us on Facebook. We love you for listening. Until next time.